You might think that a king's death is always a drama, a dagger in the dark, conspiracies, war, blood, and heroism. But the truth is much darker, more banal, and more humiliating. There are no lightning bolts here, no knightly feats. Death comes to the monarch quietly, through dirty sheets, sleepless nights, meaningless prayers, and the desperate experiments of court physicians. Here, in the very heart of luxury and power, the king dies of a fever, surrounded by superstitions, gossip, and the icy indifference of history. But before you get comfortable, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is there. I'm really curious to see who has joined us. Now get cozy. Let's begin. You awaken to another dreary dawn in your castle, the damp cold gnawing at your bones, as if your royal blood offers no shield against the steady, creeping misery of the world outside your covers. You are Charles the First Robert, King of Hungary, which you suppose is a rather impressive title if you ignore the constant threat of death, disease, and various other medieval inconveniences lurking in every shadow. Here, being king does not mean omnipotence nor even comfort. It just means your enemies and your illnesses are of a slightly more expensive sort. There is no such thing as a safe day. Every breath you take might bring with it the seeds of your doom. Every bit of food, boar, bread, fish, figs, could hide a drop of poison, or perhaps even worse, an invisible miasma of rot and pestilence that the learned men of your time have not yet named. Your physicians talk about humors with a confidence that only the truly ignorant can muster. In your secret heart, you suspect their endless discussions of bile, phlegm, and blood are just a cover for the fact that they have no idea what is actually going on inside your aching body. Your mornings are a ritual of decay. The sheets, though woven from the finest linen and embroidered with the golden lilies of Anjou, reek faintly of sweat, incense, and the subtle tang of centuries old stone. You rise not because you wish to greet the day, but because to lie abed too long is to court suspicion. There are always watchers, from the ever present chamberlain with his sly eyes to the tired physician who smells faintly of onions and desperation. Even your most trusted companions would prefer a king upright, even if barely, rather than one that does not rise at all. Your court, of course, is a cacophony of anxiety and anticipation. They do not love you, not really. Perhaps a handful are loyal in their way, but most simply play their parts. Some are waiting for a mistake, a sign of weakness. The rest, you suspect, are waiting for your funeral. The Game of Thrones, as ever, is also the game of funerals. You cannot remember a time when death did not hover in the corners of your vision. It is there, in the cough of a courtier, in the whimper of a kitchen boy who shivers in the hallway, in the hollow cheeks of your favorite page, and of course, in the mirrored glint of your own eyes, rimmed red and shadowed every morning. You are 34 years old, though the pains in your back suggest you might be twice that. No one lives long these days, unless by accident or sheer obstinacy. You have become an expert at watching for signs, both real and imagined. Your food is tasted first by an unlucky servant who miraculously is still alive after many years, proof, perhaps, that some are simply blessed by the saints. Your wine is poured only after the sommelier has made the sign of the cross over the goblet, as if that will stop the plague. The windows are opened, then closed, then opened again, all according to the prevailing theories of air and evil vapors, none of which seem to make any difference to the way your lungs ache when the weather turns. In moments of rare honesty, you admit that you are not special. Kings die just as easily as stable boys, and sometimes with far less dignity. Still, you hold on to your rituals, the prayers, the relics, the endless processions of saints' bones and sacred cloths, because to abandon them is to accept that death will come whenever it pleases, and you are, after all, a king. Dignity must be maintained, even if only as a farce. You remember stories from your youth of kings who died glorious deaths in battle or in the arms of lovers. You cannot help but notice that those stories always end abruptly, before the dysentery sets in, before the wounds fester, before the chills and the delirium strip away every last scrap of majesty. You have seen what real death looks like. It is not glorious. It is cold and slow and often accompanied by an embarrassing amount of bodily fluids. Your only true comfort is that you are not alone. Every soul in your castle, from the highest lord to the lowest scullery maid, knows the same fear, carries the same quiet dread. You share this misery with them, and they with you. The only difference is that your death will be noted in chronicles and prayers, while theirs will fade into the background hum of suffering that defines this age. And so, you get out of bed, one limb at a time, as if you are not rising to rule a kingdom, but simply to avoid dying in your sleep. You force your aching feet into your slippers, brace yourself against the cold flagstones, and begin another day as Charles the First Robert, the king who is perhaps just a little more afraid of death than he will ever admit. Your castle is the heart of your realm, a place of solemn majesty and architectural wonder, or so the minstrels sing. In truth, your residence is a monument to the unique aromas of the Middle Ages, a scent tapestry woven from sweat, incense, tallow, wet stone, and things best left unidentified. You are a king, and as such, you live surrounded by the most expensive filth money can buy. It begins as soon as you step into the corridor, the tapestries fluttering in the faint, chilly breeze. Their threads are thick with dust, years of stale smoke from endless candles, and the faint, sour scent of mildew that creeps in with the autumn rains and never quite departs. The flagstones beneath your feet, worn smooth by centuries of nervous courtiers and clanking armor, radiate a musty coolness that bites through your slippers. Even the highest halls, meant for feasting and ceremony, reek of roasted meats, spilled wine, and the collective anxiety of your retinue. Every hallway has its own flavor. Some are heavy with the scent of dried herbs, lavender, sage, rosemary, meant to ward off the bad airs that, according to the most trusted authorities, drift in from swamps and cemeteries to bring fever and death. These herbs, which should bring comfort, only remind you how desperate everyone is to keep illness at bay. The more pungent the smell, the more certain you are that something foul must be lurking beneath. Your bedchamber, no matter how many times it is scrubbed, holds the memory of sleepless nights, candle smoke, and the sharp tang of iron from your sword and armor. Even your sheets are not innocent. They are cleaned by servants whose hands are raw from lye soap and icy water, and yet each morning you find yourself wondering what precisely lingers in the fine embroidery: sweat, blood, tears, or something that escaped the attention of even your most diligent chamberlain. Downstairs, the kitchens churn out a perpetual storm of aromas. Bread bakes in great ovens, meat sizzles and spits on roasting racks, and everywhere there is the smell of boiling: cabbage, turnips, onions, and garlic, filling the air with a haze so thick it seems almost visible. You can taste the grease in your mouth long before your breakfast ever reaches your table. Even the dogs, royal in their own right, seem indifferent to the grandeur of the court, sniffing and scratching at whatever scraps they can find in the rushes scattered across the floors. The servants themselves are an essential part of your olfactory experience. No one in your castle is truly clean. The idea itself would be revolutionary, perhaps even heretical. Baths are rare, reserved for the gravely ill or the exceptionally vain. Most rely on perfumes or fresh linens to disguise the odor of living. Your courtiers favor musks and floral oils, thick enough to make your eyes water. You sometimes think their scents are the only thing distinguishing them from the livestock penned outside the gates. And then there are the animals: horses, dogs, falcons, and the occasional goat, all indispensable to a king's life, all eager to contribute their own particular notes to the grand symphony of royal stench. The stables are a universe unto themselves, a place where ammonia and straw rule supreme, and where stable boys move with the resigned precision of those who have already accepted that the scent of dung will never leave their skin. The chapel, ironically, is no refuge. Incense, meant to sanctify and uplift, only mingles with the odor of burning tallow and damp stone. The priests, wrapped in woolen robes, sweat through the long services, and the congregation coughs politely into their sleeves. The air is thick with hope and fear, prayers rising like mist over a stagnant pond. Your throne room, that grand stage for diplomacy and drama, is the worst offender. Here, men and women of every rank gather in their finest, meaning that all the sweat, perfume, leather, fur, and nervousness of the entire kingdom collects in one echoing space. Audiences with the king are meant to be moments of majesty. In reality, they are mostly exercises in breathing shallowly while pretending not to notice the overwhelming scent of humanity and barely concealed panic. Through all of this, your physicians move like ghosts. They are always close, clutching their pouches of herbs and their little jars of pungent ointments, their hands and sleeves perpetually stained by their remedies. They believe strongly in the powers of camphor and myrrh and will gladly smear them on your chest or under your nose at the slightest sign of malaise. You humor them mostly, if only because it is easier than listening to their lectures on the dangerous nature of bad vapors. At night, when the candles are snuffed and the castle sleeps, the smells seem to deepen. The fire dies to embers, and the air thickens with the aroma of damp earth, old wood, and the inevitable, inescapable truth that this grand fortress is still, at its core, a very expensive barn. You, Charles the First Robert, sit at the center of this kingdom of sense, a monarch whose power is measured less by the reach of his armies and more by the strength of his stomach. Here, in this world of sweat, incense, and ever present fear, you must rule as best you can, nose held high, eyes ever watchful, surrounded by the reminders that neither gold nor glory can protect a king from the slow, inexorable rot of time and illness. It begins, as it always does, with the smallest of betrayals, the heaviness in your limbs, the dull ache beneath your skin. You, Charles the First Robert, have become a connoisseur of discomfort, able to distinguish between the usual exhaustion of ruling a kingdom and something more insidious, gnawing at your strength. Today, the tiredness is deeper, more stubborn, as if your very bones have decided to revolt against the crown they support. You rise as usual, but every movement feels twice as hard as the day before. Your hands, the same hands that once drew swords and signed treaties, tremble ever so slightly as you pull the blanket aside. Your head aches, not with the bright fire of wine or the aftertaste of an ill considered midnight feast, but with a low, persistent pressure that turns your thoughts into mud. The servants come and go, quietly attentive, as they have always been. They do not speak of your pallor or the slow, deliberate way you lower yourself into your chair by the window. They pretend not to notice the sweat beating along your hairline or the way you clutch at the armrest when the dizziness surges. You are grateful for their silence. In the world of kings, illness is a dangerous rumor. To look weak is to invite the wolves to circle closer. The physician is summoned without fanfare. He arrives with the solemnity of a priest, clutching a bag that rattles with glass and iron. He studies you the way a falcon watches a wounded hare, hungry for answers, but careful not to appear too eager. He takes your pulse, stares deeply into your eyes, asks if your water has changed color, if your bowels are loyal, if you have been eating more or less than usual. His questions are as endless as his frown. When you describe the fatigue, the ache in your bones, the fever rising like an unwelcome tide, the physician nods sagely. He blames an excess of yellow bile. Perhaps you have been eating too many rich foods. Perhaps you have slept with the window open and let in a wicked wind. Perhaps, he says, your body is simply reminding you that even kings must obey nature's rules. His diagnosis is not comforting. He prescribes, of course, the ancient cure-all, rest, as much as a king can manage, light meals, and no strong drink. You are forbidden wine, an insult worse than treason. And your favorite roasted meats are exchanged for thin, tasteless broths that make your stomach turn. The kitchen staff, terrified of displeasing you, prepare endless bowls of gruel and watery soup, which you dutifully swallow, all the while dreaming of the fat hams and rich cheeses you once enjoyed. As the day drags on, the fever comes and goes, rising with the noon sun, breaking into chills as dusk creeps through the castle. At times, you feel almost yourself. You command audiences, sign decrees, and snap at your ministers with all the authority of a man in his prime. But when you are alone, truly alone, with only the crackle of the fire for company, the weakness returns, heavier than before. It is as if the sickness is waiting, biding its time until you can no longer fight. Your body, that old companion and betrayer, grows stranger with each passing hour. Your skin prickles with sweat even as your hands go cold. You notice with growing concern that your heart pounds at odd intervals, racing and then stuttering as though it, too, is confused about what it should be doing. Still, you refuse to show fear. Fear is for the common folk, peasants who cower at the first sign of a cough, children who believe in night spirits and vengeful ghosts. You are a king, and you have survived too much to be cowed by something as banal as a fever. And yet, you cannot help but recall stories whispered by servants and nurses. The merchant who died after 3 days of chills, the knight who sweated himself into the grave, the bishop who began his sermon one Sunday and was buried before the next. No one, it seems, is immune. By the time darkness falls, your resolve has begun to crumble. You beg the heavens for relief. Just a few hours of honest sleep, unbroken by dreams or chills. The night brings no mercy. You toss and turn, sheets twisted around your legs, sweat soaking your hair. Each time you doze, you are yanked awake by stabbing aches or shivering fits. Somewhere in the corridor, you hear your chamberlain whispering with the guards, their voices thick with worry, or perhaps anticipation. You understand, with a clarity born of exhaustion, that this is only the beginning. The worst is yet to come, and there is no way back to the easy comfort of yesterday. You, Charles the First Robert, are at the mercy of something you cannot see, cannot command, and cannot bribe. The realization settles on your chest like a stone, heavy and cold, as the fever burns hotter and the shadows deepen around your bed. You are Charles the First Robert, King of Hungary, and you are about to place your fate in the steady, ink-stained hands of medieval medicine. If you thought ruling a kingdom was risky, try surviving the tender ministrations of the greatest medical minds your court can afford. The morning after your fever first takes hold, you are treated to a parade of anxious advisors whose faces seem paler than yours. The court physician, a man of questionable hygiene but unshakable confidence, arrives promptly. He brings with him an assortment of assistants, apothecaries, and a thick book bound in leather containing centuries of half remembered remedies and noble deaths. Today, you will discover which of these categories you are destined to join. The physician consults your pulse, studies your tongue, and pronounces gravely that your humors are unbalanced. There is too much heat, not enough moisture, too much yellow bile, or possibly black. The logic is both circular and impenetrable, but it is the best the 13th century has to offer. As king, you are used to people making things up in your presence, but nowhere is this art practiced with more zeal than in medicine. With a flourish, the physician announces his first, inescapable remedy: bloodletting. No king is immune to the logic that a bit less blood can cure almost anything. You watch as the tools are laid out: a sharp knife, a shallow bowl, linen bandages not nearly as clean as anyone pretends. It does not matter that you are king. Everyone bleeds the same color in the end. You offer your arm because refusing would be an admission of fear, and kings are supposed to be fearless even when faced with medieval plumbing. The cut is swift and shallow, but the sight of your own blood pooling in the bowl is oddly sobering. You stare at it, convinced that the color is wrong, too dark, or maybe too light. The physician assures you that removing a little blood will draw out the sickness, as if disease can be coaxed from the body by sheer force of will and a sharp blade. The process leaves you dizzy, weaker than before, but the physician beams with pride. Your Majesty's complexion is improved already, he lies, tucking away the blood as if it might come in handy later. Perhaps it will be sold as a relic or used to anoint the next unlucky patient. You are next prescribed a series of compresses, mint and vinegar, wrapped in rough cloth and pressed against your temples. The sensation is both numbing and bracing, and for a moment you wonder if this might actually help. The truth, of course, is that it is simply a distraction. Something to do while the fever burns on, something for your physician to point to as evidence of his genius. The servants replenish the mint every hour, filling your chamber with its sharp, green scent. The air grows heavy, and you half expect to wake up as a roast lamb rather than a king. Meals become an ordeal of their own. You are forbidden anything remotely flavorful. Gone are the roasts, the stews, the cheeses. In their place, gruel, thin broth, a single piece of dry bread, and a parade of herbal teas that promise to restore balance, but only succeed in making you long for wine. Sometimes the kitchen sneaks in a slice of apple or a crumb of cheese out of pity or defiance. These are the high points of your day. The physician insists on hourly visits. He pinches your skin, sniffs your breath, taps your belly, and asks whether you have noticed any changes. You have. You are hungrier, angrier, and increasingly convinced that the only thing spreading faster than your fever is the physician's ego. When your wife visits, the physician explains to her, in Latin naturally, that the king's illness is well on its way to being cured. She nods politely and looks at you with open fear. She knows the truth. Every day you do not improve, The court grows more restless. Rumors begin to creep through the corridors. Some claim the physician is a genius, a man touched by the divine. Others whisper that he is a butcher, more likely to bleed a king to death than to cure him. A few wonder aloud whether your enemies might have slipped poison into your food, and if so, whether mint compresses and bloodletting can hope to keep pace with medieval toxins. The treatment regimen grows more elaborate with each passing day. There are leeches, of course, always leeches, clinging to your arms and legs, fattening themselves on royal blood. There are foul smelling poultices applied to your chest, bizarre incantations muttered over your pillows, and endless instructions for prayer and repentance. The line between science and superstition blurs until you can no longer tell if you are being healed or merely entertained. You lie in your bed, wrapped in sheets that now smell of vinegar and herbs, staring at the ceiling beams as the fever ebbs and flows. You are Charles the First Robert, king and patient, a ruler whose destiny hangs on the delicate balance of ancient theories and desperate guesses. You wonder, not for the first time, whether it might be better to face your enemies on the battlefield than to endure another day of treatments from a man who believes mint can outwit death. Outside, the world continues. The court buzzes, the kitchen fires burn, the horses stamp in the stables. Within your chamber, the real drama unfolds in a silence broken only by the drip of blood, the soft sigh of compresses, and the quiet, steady advance of an illness that cares nothing for crowns, ceremonies, or the many clever ways humans attempt to keep it at bay. The scent of mint and vinegar lingers in your chamber, but beyond your door, the true perfume of the court is panic. Word travels faster than even the plague in these halls, and before the blood has dried on the linen, everyone knows the king is ill. You do not need to look out your window to see the storm gathering. You feel it in the sudden hush as you pass, in the sidelong glances, in the shifting eyes of ministers who, until yesterday, spoke only of grain and war. Your illness is no longer just your own private trial. It is a courtly affair, and everyone is invited to participate, whether they wish to or not. The queen appears at your bedside with tears in her eyes, clutching a rosary, her knuckles white. She does not weep for your suffering, at least not entirely. She weeps for the kingdom, for the future, for the storm of politics she senses on the horizon. Children are kept at a distance, too valuable as pawns to risk contamination. The chamberlain hurries from room to room, organizing the chaos as best he can. He whispers with the captain of the guard, checks the locks on treasury chests, and consults the cook about who is eating what and when. He is terrified, less of your illness and more of what might happen if the wrong person believes you are beyond saving. In the world of thrones, a sick king is a blood-soaked invitation. Rumors multiply like flies. By midday, your illness has become the subject of endless debate among nobles, servants, and even the palace cats. Some say you were cursed by an old enemy, a rival claimant who slipped poison into your bread. Others insist that a witch in the countryside, angered by new taxes, has sent a shadow to gnaw at your heart. Still others recall the comet that passed last month, its pale tail seen as an omen by everyone with too much time and too little sense. The kitchen staff, suddenly at the center of attention, are interrogated about everything: which pot was used for your broth, whether a chicken was undercooked, if a rat was seen in the larder. The cook is defensive, vowing that nothing impure has crossed the threshold. Meanwhile, the kitchen boys glance nervously at each other, remembering that last month's cheese did taste a little different. Into this stew of dread and speculation march the would be healers. Every noble has a favorite wise woman or man of knowledge, and each of these characters now arrives with baskets of herbs, odd shaped stones, and pouches filled with substances better left unnamed. Your guards stand at the door, arms crossed, faces set in professional scowls. Still, the pressure is unrelenting. Someone always has a cousin who cured a fever with frog spawn and parsley, or a grandfather who once exorcised an ague with salt and a dead mouse. Each healer brings a new ritual. Some sprinkle salt across the threshold, muttering that it wards off evil spirits. Others scatter ashes from last Sunday's palm branches, believing that nothing demonic can survive holy fire. Someone pins a sprig of rue to your pillow, and you are advised by three separate sources to sleep with a piece of garlic under your tongue. You obey none of these instructions, but your room slowly fills with enough herbs to stock an apothecary. The clergy arrive, not to be outdone by the healers. They pray over you, anoint your forehead, light candles that sputter and hiss in the heavy air. One monk attempts to chant an exorcism, only to be shushed by your physician, who still believes he is in charge of the situation. The tension between science and faith becomes another flavor in the room, a sour, unspoken rivalry. Superstition is the true king now. Servants cross themselves whenever they see you, and some refuse to enter your room after dark. A few are convinced that death itself walks the halls, trailing you like a dog. They place bowls of water under your bed to catch the sickness as it falls from your body during the night. By morning, several bowls are mysteriously overturned, which only convinces them further that invisible forces are at work. At dinner, no one sits too close to your chair. Conversation is forced, laughter brittle, as courtiers discuss anything but the fever that crackles behind your eyes. Instead, they gossip about omens, a raven seen on the chapel roof, a mirror that cracked without reason, a child born with 6 toes in a distant village. Each sign is dissected and debated until even you are tempted to believe that the universe itself is watching your sickbed. Outside, peasants gather at the castle gates, lighting candles and offering prayers. Some bring gifts of bread and chickens, hoping a well-fed king will recover. Others send crude letters demanding lower taxes if the king survives. You realize grimly that even your health is currency, in the great exchange of fear and hope. Within your walls, the air is thick with incense and anxiety. You see it in your wife's nervous hands, in the twitching lips of your advisors, in the way even your favorite hunting dogs shy from your touch. The palace, usually a hive of purpose and ambition, now moves at the pace of dread. Every creak of the floorboards is a rumor. Every cough in the corridor is a potential disaster. You, Charles the First Robert, lie at the center of it all, propped on your pillows, as panic takes root in the stones beneath your feet. Your court is a theater, and your illness the star attraction. All you can do is endure, surrounded by 1,000 tiny acts of faith and desperation, none of which make your fever break or your limbs any less heavy. The candles burn low, the prayers continue, the court waits, restless and afraid. And you, monarch of Hungary, wonder which will come first: a cure, a miracle, or the next stage of your relentless, unspectacular decline. It does not take long for your illness to become a diplomatic crisis. Within a day, word spreads beyond the palace walls, leaping from merchant to traveler, from abbot to ambassador. By the time the sun sets, every court in Europe knows the King of Hungary is unwell. For some, this is reason to light a candle and pray. For others, an opportunity to sharpen knives and pens. For you, Charles the First Robert, it is the dawn of another ordeal, one made not of fever dreams, but of letters, seals, and endless, unfulfilled hope. Your counsel, now more desperate than deferential, convenes in whispers at your bedside. Their faces are drawn and tired, and their eyes flick constantly toward the window, as if expecting salvation to ride in on a cloud. The oldest among them finally suggests what everyone has been dreading: you must appeal to the medical wisdom of Europe. After all, the Italian peninsula boasts universities. The French have their herbalists, and the Germans their alchemists and miracle peddlers. If your own physicians have failed, perhaps one of these foreign geniuses will succeed. Thus begins the great letter writing, a parade of scribes, their fingers stained with ink, assembling at your bedside with parchment and quills. You dictate, or at least pretend to. In reality, your head throbs and your tongue feels thick, so your chancellor fills in the flowery details. The letters are grand and urgent, filled with royal signatures and heavy wax seals. They plead for help, for expertise, for any man or woman who can offer a cure to what the local doctors have only managed to complicate. Messengers are dispatched at once, galloping through mud and rain, armed with pouches of gold and strict instructions to show haste. They carry your plight to distant lands, to the University of Bologna, where doctors debate the best way to remove a spleen, to Paris, where scholars insist that a king's breath should be analyzed alongside his horoscope, and to the monasteries of the German states, where monks distill miracle waters that taste suspiciously like cheap brandy. The first to respond is an Italian doctor, famous for his thick beard and thicker accent, whose reputation rests mostly on his willingness to experiment. He arrives with a wagon load of jars, powders, and obscure instruments that look more suited to torture than healing. The court watches in awe as he unpacks dried snakeskins, jars of leeches, and a large, mysterious wheel. He bows low, kisses your ring, and proceeds to examine your tongue as if it might reveal the secrets of life itself. Next comes a French herbalist, draped in robes scented with lavender and rosemary. She enters your chamber as if it were a chapel, insisting that the true cause of your malaise lies in disturbed vapors and the unnatural alignment of the stars. She burns bundles of herbs, waves her hands in cryptic gestures, and prescribes elaborate baths that involve rose petals, milk, and something she calls moon water. The court is divided. Some see a visionary, others a charlatan. The German alchemist's riffle is heralded by the scent of sulfur and the sound of glass clinking. He claims to have studied under the greatest minds of his age, none of whom are alive to confirm this. His approach is more, shall we say, hands on. He wishes to distill your urine, analyze your breath through copper tubes, and consult a complex chart of planetary movements. He is convinced the position of Mars is to blame for your suffering and spends much of his time peering out the window at the night sky, muttering about conjunctions and retrogrades. None of these visitors can agree on a diagnosis, let alone a cure. The Italian wants more bloodletting. The French herbalist swears by soothing infusions, and the German proposes a combination of mercury and boiled nettles. Your own physicians, now feeling both threatened and inspired, double their efforts, more compresses, more prayers, more complicated charts of your bowel movements. The result is a flurry of activity. Herbs are ground, leeches applied, veins opened and closed, all while the court holds its collective breath. The chaos in your sick room is matched only by the chaos outside it. Courtiers jostle for the favor of the new doctors, hoping that proximity to innovation might offer some protection. The kitchens are pressed into service, boiling endless cauldrons of water, fetching obscure ingredients, and trying not to look too dismayed when told to prepare a broth of blackbird and cinnamon. The servants, for their part, develop strong opinions about the relative merits of Italian, French, and German remedies, which they share in whispers while scrubbing the corridors. For you, Charles the First Robert, it is a parade of faces, languages, and substances. Some taste foul, some merely strange, and a few are so alarming you feign sleep rather than drink them. At times, you almost believe in the spectacle. Perhaps this foreign wonder worker will succeed where your own physicians have failed. Perhaps a new herb, a new chant, a new constellation will turn the tide. But then the fever comes again, hollowing you out, and you realize that the only thing spreading faster than your illness is the illusion of control. As the days pass and the letters keep arriving, replies from healers too old, too far, or too cautious to undertake the journey, you grow weary of hope. Each new promise is another stone in the pocket of your faith, dragging you further beneath the surface. Outside your window, Life goes on. The bells ring. The peasants argue. The horses stamp in their stalls. Inside, the world has shrunk to a bed, a bowl, and the steady procession of well meaning incompetence. Your illness, once a private burden, is now a European event. Kings, queens, and scholars send advice, prayers, and, in a few cases, subtle hints about succession. All the while, you lie amid the clatter of foreign remedies, wondering if the true cure for a medieval king's illness is simply to outlast the latest expert's enthusiasm. So you endure, eyes half shut, listening to the chorus of voices, the clink of bottles, the scratch of quills, and the unspoken question that lingers in every room: who will write the last letter, and to whom? You always believed your family would be a source of comfort in illness, the way minstrels sing of wives who watch through the night, and children who pray with folded hands by their father's bedside. In truth, you discover your kin are not so different from your courtiers, save for the fact that their ambitions are tangled with blood and their prayers are laced with calculation. Your wife, the queen, is the first to appear each morning, her face composed into a mask of loving concern. She sits beside your bed, clutching your hand in hers, too tightly sometimes, as if afraid you might slip away between her fingers. She speaks softly, in whispers meant to reassure, but you sense the strain in her voice. She is thinking not just of your fever, but of the lines of succession, the alliances that hang on your pulse, the rival claims that will blossom like weeds if you falter. She brings your children one by one to your bedside. The older ones stand stiffly, their lessons in etiquette holding firm against the tide of fear. The younger ones fidget, casting sidelong glances at the array of doctors, the bowls of herbs, the flickering candles. They mumble wishes for your recovery, repeating prayers drilled into them by nurses and priests. You thank them, and they retreat, their eyes wide, already half forgetting the man behind the crown. In the evenings, when the court's bustle quiets and the halls grow dim, your wife returns. Sometimes she sits in silence, her thoughts as distant as the moon. Sometimes she weeps quietly, the sound muffled by the heavy drapes. You wonder, in these moments, which tears are for you and which are for herself, for the queen whose life is now a chessboard with too many moving pieces. Beyond the queen and children, there is the extended family. Brothers and sisters, cousins and in-laws arrive in steady procession. Some make the journey under the pretense of concern, others with barely disguised urgency. They crowd the corridors, exchanging news and rumors, measuring each other's ambitions in every glance. You watch them from your bed, the way a general surveys his troops before a battle he knows he cannot win. Some relatives bring gifts, relics of dubious authenticity, silks from distant markets, precious stones that catch the candlelight but do nothing for your fever. Each gift is a statement, a reminder of their presence and their place in the web of succession. The most devout offer prayers, requesting intercession from every saint in the calendar, their voices rising in practiced devotion. The more pragmatic prefer quiet conversations with the Chancellor, seeking assurances about inheritances and regencies. In the privacy of your chambers, your wife tries to reassure you. She speaks of your strength, of God's favor, of the stability you have brought to the realm. You nod, grateful for her words, but you see the worry in her eyes, the calculation in the set of her jaw. She is already thinking of the future, a future that may not include you, a future where her role will shift from consort to widow, from queen to regent, or perhaps to pawn. There are moments of genuine tenderness. She smooths your hair, presses cool cloths to your brow, whispers memories of happier days. For a few minutes, you can almost believe in the stories, in the unshakable loyalty and love. But always, beneath the surface, the knowledge lingers. Love and power are uneasy bedfellows, and the throne has a way of sharpening even the softest hearts. Your eldest son, barely grown, tries to hide his terror beneath a veneer of confidence. He asks you about statecraft, about enemies and allies, about the weight of the crown. You answer as best you can, offering lessons in patience, in suspicion, in the art of appearing invincible even when you are weak. He listens, but you see the doubt in his eyes. He is not ready, and neither are you, but the sickness is indifferent to readiness. As the days pass, the atmosphere in your chambers shifts. The initial flurry of worry gives way to a kind of watchful waiting. Your family grows quieter, more introspective. They sit for longer hours, their eyes lingering on you, as if memorizing your features, or perhaps searching for signs of recovery or decline. The air grows heavy with unspoken questions. Who will lead if you cannot? What will happen to the realm? Who will rise and who will fall? Even in your fevered dreams, you sense the weight of their gazes, the hush of their whispers. You are not just a father, a husband, a brother. You are the keystone in an arch that spans kingdoms. Should you crumble, everything around you will shift, perhaps slowly, perhaps violently, but inevitably. Your family knows this, even if they will not say it aloud. You wish in your heart for simpler affections, for children who need only a father, a wife who needs only a husband. But this is not your world, and you are not just a man. You are Charles the First Robert, King of Hungary, and every tear, every prayer, every gentle touch is laced with hope, fear, and the cold logic of survival. It happens slowly, and then all at once. The boundaries of your body blur, your senses twist, and you are no longer certain if you are Charles the First Robert, King of Hungary, or simply a heap of aching flesh. The fever, once a whisper, now roars. It rolls over you in waves, a heat so intense that it seems to warp the very air around your bed. Sweat pools beneath your neck and soaks the sheets, and each breath feels as though it has traveled through fire and returned as steam. You try to focus on the world outside yourself, the flicker of candlelight on stone walls, the whispering voices at your bedside, the distant clang of the smithy's hammer in the castle yard, but the fever is a jealous god, demanding all your attention. It stirs up visions. Faces from your past drift across the ceiling, sometimes gentle, sometimes accusing. Your father appears, stern and silent, and you mumble answers to questions he never asked. Old enemies visit, their grins too wide, reminding you of debts left unpaid and insults never avenged. Sometimes you think you are awake, holding court, issuing decrees with a trembling hand. The courtiers nod, the scribes scribble, but you notice their faces are melting, their eyes black holes. You open your mouth to speak, but your voice comes out thick and slurred, as if you are shouting from the bottom of a well. The hallucinations are so vivid that you almost forget you are sick until the pain snaps you back, sharp as a knife pressed to your ribs. The court physician appears in these visions, always at the worst times, clutching his bloodied tools and rattling his bag of leeches. He lectures you about the balance of humors, about the dangers of hot and cold, dry and wet. He is a prophet of contradiction. First, he demands you be covered with blankets to drive out the chill. Then he orders the windows thrown open to let the fever escape. You are too tired to argue, so you submit to each new indignity, drifting between heat and cold, sweat and shiver. Sometimes the fever breaks for an hour or two. In these moments, you feel a brief, foolish hope. You sip at a cup of broth. You squeeze your wife's hand. You even summon the strength to offer a few words of statecraft to your eldest son. But hope is a trickster, and the fever always returns, fiercer than before, as if mocking your resilience. Your body is no longer your own. Your hands twitch uncontrollably. Your thoughts scatter like leaves before a storm. The priests are ever present now, their prayers a constant drone. They read psalms, sprinkle holy water, and urge you to confess, as if a well timed act of contrition might frighten the illness away. You confess your sins in fragments, some real, some invented, just to give them something to do. The fever strips away your dignity, reducing you to a bundle of needs and regrets, and even your confessions become fevered, half remembered tales of old feuds and petty triumphs. There are moments when you are not sure if you are dying or merely wishing for the relief of unconsciousness. The pain is everywhere, a gnawing in your belly, a stabbing in your head, a heaviness in your chest that makes every breath a labor. The doctors try their remedies: bitterness on your tongue, hot stones at your feet, cold compresses on your forehead, but nothing pierces the fog of your suffering. You become convinced at one point that your bed is floating, drifting slowly across a dark river toward a shore you cannot see. Your family comes and goes, their faces swimming in and out of focus. Your wife's voice is soft, but her words slip away before you can catch them. Your eldest son sits in a corner, silent, as if memorizing the moment for later. You see your mother, dead these many years, tisking at the state of your hair and straightening your blankets. You want to tell her you are not ready to go, but the words will not come. Each night is a new ordeal. The fever climbs, then falls, then climbs again. You sweat through sheets, blankets, and even the mattress. Servants change your linens by candlelight, muttering prayers and crossing themselves. You lose track of time. Days bleed into nights, and nights into a haze of pain, sweat, and the soft, endless chanting of priests. And always, lurking behind the agony, is fear, not just of death, but of what comes after. You think of the kingdom, your family, the throne. You wonder if your enemies are already preparing for your absence, if your allies are sharpening their knives. In the rare moments of lucidity, you remember you are not just a man, but a king, and kings do not die quietly, even when they want to. In your most fevered hour, you sense something vast and cold waiting beyond the edge of the bed, a presence that does not care for crowns or titles. You are Charles the First Robert, but the fever does not know your name, and it will not be bargained with. In the end, all you can do is endure, holding on to shreds of self as the heat rises and your world dissolves into shadows, whispers, and dreams. You always believed that kingship granted a kind of invulnerability, a layer of armor, invisible yet impenetrable, forged from law, gold, and the awe of your subjects. In truth, the crown merely paints a target on your brow. Now, lying in your sweat soaked bed, shivering 1 hour and burning the next, you discover the final, humiliating secret of power. When illness strikes, you are not a king at all, but a patient like any other. Worse, you are a spectacle, as powerless as a pauper, with only the dignity of your title left to cling to, and even that dignity proves as slippery as fevered dreams. Your voice, once an instrument that could hush a hall or rouse an army, has shrunk to a hoarse whisper. Courtiers gather outside your door not to pay homage, but to listen for the crack in your voice, the cough that lingers too long, the silence that will announce your end. Even your loyal jester avoids your room, having discovered that laughter wilts in the presence of true suffering. You do not rule from your bed. You do not even command. Decisions are made in hushed meetings in the corridor. Edicts are signed with a trembling hand, if at all, and even then, they are edited and interpreted by men whose ambitions are suddenly much larger than their loyalty. In a way, your kingdom already has many kings, none of them you. The pain, once a private burden, is now public property. Every detail of your decline is relayed from chambermaid to guard, from scribe to advisor. If you groan in the night, 3 different versions of your suffering circulate by sunrise. If you manage to eat a crust of bread, the kitchens gossip about your sudden improvement. Should you cry out in delirium, a priest is summoned. Should you fall silent, a council is called. Your illness is no longer yours. It belongs to the entire court, perhaps even to history. You see this powerlessness in the eyes of your doctors. They hover over your bed, trading glances and theories. Each feels the weight of your fate. If you live, they will be called miracle workers. If you die, they will be the butchers blamed in every tavern and prayer house from Buddha to Naples. The truth, of course, is that they have no more control over your body than you do. They bleed you, feed you, wrap you in blankets, or strip you bare, all with the solemn confidence of men casting dice in a dark room. Even your body rebels against you. Limbs that once held a sword or an infant prince now tremble, jerk, or lie limp and useless. Your mind wanders, drifting down corridors of memory that always seem to end in regret. There is no privacy in sickness, and certainly none for a king. Servants must clean and turn you. Doctors must prod and probe. Family must watch your struggle, pretending not to see your humiliation. Sometimes you wish for darkness, for sleep so deep that neither pain nor pity can reach you. Your chamber, once a seat of power, has become a stage. Every day, a new audience assembles. Some arrive out of duty, some from love, but more than a few come for calculation, seeking clues to the future in the color of your skin or the length of your size. They stand at the foot of your bed, bow politely, and ask about your health with the practiced sympathy of seasoned actors. You play your part, answering as best you can, never admitting how close you feel to vanishing altogether. The kingdom does not pause for your suffering. Outside your window, life surges on. Horses are shod, bread is baked, taxes are collected, and wars are whispered about. But within these walls, time distorts. The court operates at the pace of your decline, each hour measured not by bells, but by the rhythm of your breath. Each day brings new rumors, new fears, new contenders for the title of most indispensable advisor. The politicking does not stop. It merely grows quieter, more desperate, and more ruthless. It is in this quiet that you begin to understand what true helplessness feels like. Not the powerlessness of a lost battle or a failed treaty, but the helplessness of flesh and bone, of a mind half drowned by fever. All the rituals of kingship, the coronation, the oaths, the processions, mean nothing now. You would trade every symbol of authority for a single night of dreamless sleep, a day without pain. And yet, you are expected to die well, to be brave, noble, and stoic, to inspire with your suffering, and to leave the world gracefully. You try, because it is the only power left to you, but you know in your heart that death is rarely dignified, and suffering is never instructive, except in teaching humility. You are Charles the First Robert, King of Hungary, but in the end, you are just a man in a bed, waiting to see what will come next. By now, your body is no longer yours alone, but a battlefield contested by the armies of medieval medicine. You, Charles the First Robert, King of Hungary, have become both patient and experiment, subject to the wildest whims of every self-professed healer summoned to your side. If desperation had a smell, it would be the bitter cocktail of garlic, smoke, and vinegar that now fills your chamber. The Italian doctor is the first to resume the assault. He returns with a new vial, something viscous and silvery, swirling hypnotically in the firelight. Mercury, he announces, is the latest miracle lauded in the universities of Padua and whispered about in the back rooms of Bologna. The logic is simple. If the humors are out of balance, surely a heavy metal will shock them into harmony. You let him rub the cold substance into your skin, its chill biting deeper than your fever. Perhaps you are being poisoned in slow motion, but you are too tired to protest. Not to be outdone, the French herbalist offers a less dramatic, though no less pungent, approach. Her arsenal consists of garlic, pounded, raw, infused in oil, or pressed into poultices and applied directly to your chest. It will draw out the heat, she says, and you do not argue. The stench is so overwhelming that even your most loyal attendants keep a respectful distance. Some nights, you swear you can smell yourself from across the room. You imagine the court composing legends about the king who was half mortal, half onion. The German alchemist, ever the enthusiast for the exotic, produces a jar of something even the servants refuse to touch. He calls it universal balm, brewed from a secret recipe involving nettles, goose fat, and the ashes of a black cat. He insists that this, combined with a strict diet of barley water and boiled roots, will realign your spirit with the celestial spheres. You submit to his ministrations, wondering if the true cause of your malaise is simply the cumulative weight of too many well intentioned remedies. Meanwhile, your native physicians attempt to assert some authority. They recall old methods, insisting on more bloodletting, more leeches, more cautious prayers to every saint whose feast day coincides with your fever. The result is a cacophony of rituals, each more elaborate than the last. Your room becomes a gallery of conflicting theories, herbs hung from every beam, bowls of mysterious fluids beside your bed, crosses on every wall, and a steady procession of clergy chanting for your soul. You are bathed and anointed, massaged and wrapped, bled and purged. If hope could be measured in concoctions, you would live forever. Unfortunately, each new cure leaves you weaker, and the fever, insulted by the attention, seems only to grow bolder. Your skin grows blotchy, your mouth dry and foul. Sometimes your heart races, then slows, as if it too is weighing its options. Your courtiers and family do their best to keep faith in the process. They debate the virtues of mercury versus garlic, the efficacy of prayer versus purgation. Some swear that the king's color improved after the Italian's last visit. Others claim that the Frenchwoman's garlic nearly drove the fever away. In private, everyone admits that no one knows anything, but tradition demands that treatments must be tried until all options are exhausted or the patient is. The prayers intensify with your symptoms. Priests fill the room, chanting psalms, burning incense, and reciting exorcisms for good measure. You confess your sins again, this time with more creativity. The boundary between medicine and magic dissolves entirely. The bishop sprinkles holy water on your brow, while the alchemist mutters incantations over a bubbling pot. You find yourself the centerpiece of a contest between heaven and earth, your body a prize neither seems eager to claim. All the while, you drift in and out of consciousness, your mind battered by fever and fatigue. At times, the world shrinks to a blur of voices and faces. At others, it expands into wild hallucinations, a battlefield of saints, serpents, and doctors with leeches for fingers. You wonder if you will ever feel cool again, or if this is simply the new geography of your existence: heat, cold, numbness, and the relentless parade of healers, each convinced they are the answer to the riddle of your survival. You surrender to the ritual, the madness, the hope, and the horror. You are no longer fighting the illness, nor are you fighting the cures. You are a king in name, a patient in reality, an object lesson in the limitations of both medicine and majesty. Each day is a cycle: new ointments, new poultices, new prayers, and the slow, sinking realization that the end might be nearer than anyone dares admit. And still, the garlic lingers, the mercury gleams, the prayers echo, and the fever burns. If your body is to become a legend, it will be not for the glory of battle, but for the sheer, stubborn resistance of a man subjected to every cure known to Christendom and a few that even the saints would not endorse. The true siege of illness always falls with the night. As dusk bleeds into darkness, the world beyond your window retreats, and your world shrinks to the size of your bed and the oppressive weight of the covers. You, Charles the First Robert, are alone, surrounded, yes, by servants and priests, but truly alone, beset by aches, sweats, and the relentless ghostly churn of your own mind. The days are bad, but the nights are merciless. The fever that seemed merely uncomfortable in sunlight becomes predatory in darkness. Sweat pours from you, soaking every layer of linen, running in chilly rivulets down your spine, pooling beneath your back until you are unsure where your flesh ends and the bedding begins. Each drop is both relief and torture, a sign that your body still fights, but also that it is losing the war. The room itself turns monstrous. Candles flicker, casting long, trembling shadows that crawl up the walls and leer at you from the corners. The scent of garlic, vinegar, sweat, and something sour, some ancient, unmistakable smell of sickness, clings to the drapes and hovers above you like a curse. Your senses sharpen to absurd clarity, and you become an unwilling connoisseur of medieval rot, the metallic tang of your own blood, the musty breath of ancient wood, the reek of woolen blankets that have not seen the sun in months. Your body is a geography of pain, each limb staking out its own complaint. Your legs twitch and burn, restless and cold, demanding motion your fevered head cannot permit. Your back aches as if you had fought a campaign on horseback. Every joint is a tiny forge, hammering away through the hours when sleep should bring peace. Sometimes the pain comes in slow waves, lulling you into false hope, then crashes over you again in a thunder of shivers and cramps. And so you drift, not quite sleeping, not quite waking. The boundary between the two dissolves as the fever feeds on your exhaustion, serving up visions so vivid you cannot always tell if you are dreaming or simply delirious. The visions are a pageant of your life and all its ghosts. You see your childhood, golden and distant, a time before crowns and responsibilities, when illness meant only a scolding nurse and a few days of missed lessons. Then faces parade before you, friends lost in battle, foes bested in council, lovers whose names you only remember at night. Each is as real as the damp pillow under your cheek. Some come with blessings, others with accusations, all with the strange certainty of dreams. You speak to these shades, sometimes out loud, sometimes only in your mind. You apologize for old slights, forgive old wounds, beg for forgotten forgiveness. Your words tumble out, half prayer, half confession, and sometimes a priest or a servant catches a fragment, glancing nervously at the door as if you might at any moment slip fully into the other world. Some visions are less comforting. You see yourself wandering endless corridors lined with open doors, each leading to a memory you had hoped to forget. There are battlefields shrouded in fog, banquet tables where all the guests wear death masks, churches where the choir sings only for the dead. You call out for guidance, for peace, for release, but the only answer is the rhythmic drip of sweat from your brow and the grinding ache in your bones. The remedies, so confidently applied in daylight, become their own torments at night. The leeches, still and fat after their feast, seem to mock you from their bowls. The compresses turn cold and clammy, and the prayers of the clergy blend into the drone of your own muttered pleas. Your doctors, looking more ghostly by candlelight, huddle at the far end of the room, debating whether to try something new or simply wait out the inevitable. And always there is the clock, an enemy more ruthless than any living rival. You count the hours by the sound of bells and distant towers, by the changing of guards outside your door, by the slow consumption of wax as candles gutter and expire. Sometimes you wish the night would end. At others, you fear what dawn might bring. The past and future lose their meaning in the endless churn of night and fever. Yet, even as your body weakens, something in you refuses surrender. The mind, though battered, persists in its desperate calculations. Who will care for your children? Who will defend the crown? What story will be told of these final nights? Sometimes you imagine yourself standing up, banishing the doctors, demanding your sword. Sometimes you simply pray for oblivion. The pain does not abate, the sweats do not dry, and the visions, oh, the visions, come ever thicker. You are king and captive, patient and penitent, ruler of a realm shrunk to four clammy walls. Each night you think must surely be the last. Each morning, somehow, you wake to begin again. The chronicle of your pains continues, line by feverish line, a record more honest than any scribe, will ever dare to write. While you lie ensnared by fever, the real drama of your illness unspools not in your sickbed, but in the corridors, kitchens, and courtyards of your palace. It is said that a king's suffering is never truly private. You, Charles I Robert, find yourself transformed from sovereign to story, your every sigh, convulsion, or muttered dream feeding a monstrous network of rumor that stretches from servant to noble, cook to chancellor, priest to page. The whispering starts small, as it always does. Two maids, wringing out another sweat soaked sheet, pause and glance at each other over the steaming tub. It's not just a fever, says the first, lowering her voice to a dramatic whisper. They say he's been poisoned. The second nods, already convinced, and together they reconstruct the day's meals, noting every unusual herb, every unfamiliar servant who brushed too close to the king's cup. By midday, poison has become a plausible explanation for your decline, far more comforting somehow than the chaotic cruelty of disease. After all, poison implies intention, a human hand to blame. It is a story that makes sense to those who crave order. Who, after all, would benefit most from your untimely demise? Is it the rival prince in Poland, forever sulking over lost lands? The Venetian merchant who muttered curses after your latest tariffs? The ambitious cousin, always lurking a step behind the throne? A poisoned king turns every relationship into a conspiracy. Elsewhere, others argue the opposite. This is no plot, but the hand of God Himself. Old women press their foreheads to icons, whispering that your illness is divine punishment for some forgotten sin. Perhaps you have failed to fund enough churches or taxed the monasteries too harshly. Perhaps your wars have spilled too much Christian blood. Priests seize the moment, warning the congregation that even kings are not safe from heavenly wrath, and sermons swell with lists of royal transgressions and the need for penance. The clergy's whisper campaign is both subtler and more dangerous. Every failed treatment is proof of God's displeasure. Every new symptom is another link in a chain of divine justice. One particularly creative friar suggests that your fever is the work of a jealous saint, wronged by a slight during your last pilgrimage. A second counters that it must be the result of your court's increasing indulgence in foreign vices. Soon, the chapels are busier than the sick room, with courtiers and commoners alike jockeying to be seen repenting the hardest. The court itself, that den of ambition and nerves, turns your suffering into currency. The most loyal rush to your defense, swearing that only a fiend could harm such a just ruler. The more pragmatic keep their options open, quietly consulting the nearest cleric, physician, or astrologer for a reading of your fate. In corners, whispers rise. Some say a shadowy assassin has already been discovered and quietly executed. Others that a new batch of wine has been confiscated by the guards, tested, and found unusually bitter. A few, sensing opportunity, begin currying favor with your heir, hedging their bets against your recovery. Even your healers are swept up in the storm. The Italian doctor declares that only a rare and subtle poison could resist so many expert treatments, which is naturally beyond the skills of local rivals. The French herbalist counters that no poison could last so long without visible sores. Clearly, the culprit is a miasma, or worse, a hex. The German alchemist, ever practical, blames a rare celestial conjunction and offers to distill an antidote from starlight and Mercury for the right fee. The rumors evolve. Some believe you have been cursed by a spurned lover. Others suspect a demonic pact struck in secret to win a war and now come due. A few whisper about the strange dreams you have muttered in your fever, wondering if you are being visited by the spirits of the dead, sent to collect the debt of unfinished business. There is no place untouched by suspicion. The kitchens are scoured for tainted salt. The wine cellars are locked and unlocked a dozen times a day. Servants who so much as cough too close to the king's door are reassigned to remote stables, lest they carry a contagion. Every object you touch is scrutinized, every letter opened with tongs, every visitor eyed with barely concealed mistrust. But the most exhausting part of these rumors is that, in their way, they are more real than your fever. They shape the decisions made outside your sick room. A general, convinced you have been cursed, delays a campaign. A counselor, fearing poison, delays a treaty. Your wife prays harder. Your son stands straighter. Your enemies, inside and outside the court, wait with renewed patience for the dust to settle, calculating what story will most benefit them when it does. You, meanwhile, sweat and shiver and try to ignore the faint murmurs drifting through the walls. In rare moments of clarity, you wonder which story will survive you: poisoned by an enemy's hand, struck down by the wrath of God, or simply unlucky enough to fall victim to a world where suffering is its own explanation. History, you suspect, will choose whichever rumor makes the best tale, and perhaps that is the only justice available to kings and mortals alike. There comes a point, no one marks the exact hour, when the fever stops being merely an illness and becomes a signal. Everyone feels it, from your silent wife to the stone-faced captain of the guard. The court slows its endless schemes and tiptoes around the edge of something vast and final. The end may still be days or even weeks away, but the air tastes different. You, Charles the First Robert, King of Hungary, can sense it, even through the haze. Your time as the world's center is almost done. Now, the business of succession must begin. The council is summoned, at first quietly, then with increasing urgency. Their faces gather in your chambers one evening, a living fresco of anxiety and calculation. Some are family, blood of your blood. Some are merely long-time survivors of court intrigue. All of them try to look solemn, but their eyes dart to the windows, the door, the young prince in the shadows. The atmosphere is one of forced composure, every gesture a negotiation with fate. You are propped up with pillows, your face ghost pale, hands trembling under the coverlet. They address you with the full ceremony of your rank, your majesty, sire, but beneath the words, you hear the real question: how much longer? Can you still give an order, sign a decree, name a successor? They want the ritual, but they need clarity. A sick king is dangerous. A dying king is a political earthquake. You try to muster your old voice. The words come out thin and slurred, but the council leans in, eager to catch each syllable. You urge loyalty to your heir, whose face flickers with terror and a hunger for reassurance. You speak of continuity, of the peace you have built, and the need for it to endure. In your mind, you deliver a rousing speech. In reality, you offer only fragments, a patchwork of lessons learned the hard way. The council listens, nods, and as soon as they dare, begins to debate among themselves, first quietly, then in urgent whispers. The chancellor reminds everyone of your previous decrees. The bishop assures them that God will guide the succession. The captain of the guard pledges the loyalty of the army to your heir, but you note he does not make eye contact with your son. Each is already hedging, preparing for every possible outcome. The queen sits beside you, her hand on yours, equal parts comfort and witness. You see her lips move in silent prayer, or perhaps calculation. In the absence of your old authority, she is the center now. The children watch, silent, sensing that something sacred is happening, but unable to grasp the details. Their lives, too, hang in the balance of these whispered arguments. When the council disperses, the room grows quieter, but the tension lingers. Now, it is the turn of the priest. He enters, all humility and soft robes, bearing the tools of his trade: cross, oil, and the little silver box of the host. He asks, as gently as he can, if you wish to confess. You agree. What else is there to do? Confession in the shadow of death is both more honest and more theatrical than usual. You begin with the sins you remember: pride, anger, the broken promises of youth. Then, perhaps for the benefit of your audience, you add more: the ill considered campaigns, the wasted gold, the decisions that led to so much unnecessary bloodshed. You confess, too, the secrets you never told anyone: small betrayals, old regrets, the nights you lay awake wishing you could be just a man, not a monarch. The priest nods, absolves, and anoints. Your family kneels around the bed, and for a moment you feel the weight of their hopes and fears pressing in from all sides. You try to give comfort. Tell your eldest that the crown is only a burden if you let it be. Tell your wife that she must be strong, not just for your children, but for the realm. The words come out in gasps and whispers, half formed but urgent. Your mind flickers between worlds. You remember your own father, coughing out his last commands in a chamber much like this one. You remember the faces of advisors who betrayed you, allies who stood by you, and the enemies you never managed to defeat. In the firelight, they all seem equally distant, part of a story that is no longer yours to shape. As the ritual ends, the priest offers the host, and you take it with trembling fingers, feeling its fragile weight on your tongue. The room is heavy with the smell of incense and sweat. Your soul is, supposedly, made clean. The world does not pause, but it does grow quieter. The whispers outside the door fade. Your son kneels at your bedside, clutching your hand. Your wife weeps softly. The priest murmurs his final prayers. You are left with your thoughts. The council has its instructions, the succession its ceremony, the realm its moment of closure. Whether any of it will matter tomorrow is beyond your power to decide. You, Charles the First Robert, have passed on what little you can. The rest is in the hands of God, fortune, and the endless appetite of history. In this long, mired process, the transfer of power, the confessions, the rituals, the blessings, and the final orders, you see the true, unchanging face of monarchy. Not triumph, not grandeur, but the careful, painful business of letting go. It is a curious thing, the performance of care in a royal sick room. Now that you, Charles the First Robert, are firmly in the territory between life and death, the court gathers with a sudden, almost comical abundance of concern. They cluster by your bed in well rehearsed proximity, each person conscious that someone is watching, someone is tallying their tears, someone will remember who cared the most, or at least who looked like they did. The procession never ends. Nobles glide in, one by one or in pairs, bowing just deeply enough to suggest both loyalty and measured hope. Some come with gifts, a relic wrapped in velvet, a sprig of rosemary for your pillow, an expensive bottle of imported vinegar guaranteed by a cousin's physician's neighbor to draw out fever. Each offering is placed with ceremonial care on your bedside table, joining the growing collection of holy trinkets, wilted flowers, and strange, unidentifiable tokens. The Queen presides over these visits with a steady hand and an expert eye. She thanks each well-wisher with the perfect blend of gratitude and dignity, and sees to it that every gesture is noted by the right witnesses. Your eldest son stands close by, silent, memorizing each face, his first lesson in the politics of death. The younger children are shepherded in for brief appearances, their eyes wide and confused, then spirited away again before your ragged breaths can frighten them too much. There is no privacy left to you. Servants dart in and out, adjusting blankets, refilling basins, exchanging glances that speak volumes. The court physician, now demoted to master of ceremonies, hovers at your shoulder, reporting on your pulse and your pallor to all present, as though your body were a new wine, being sampled and critiqued by the court's most discerning connoisseurs. His rivals, the foreign doctors, stand at the foot of the bed, arms folded, trading pointed observations in low voices, each convinced that their own recipe for mint tea or garlic oil could still save you, if only you would let them try. The priests and monks rotate through in a holy relay. They offer prayers at your bedside, sometimes in Latin, sometimes in the guttural music of the local tongue. They bring candles which drip wax onto the flagstones, and vials of holy water that they sprinkle on your brow, the sheets, even the fruit bowl. You have lost count of the times you have been blessed, anointed, and absolved in the last week alone. You begin to wonder if heaven has grown tired of hearing your name. Every so often, someone tries to lighten the mood. A courtier recalls a moment of past triumph, your first victory in battle, the day you outwitted a scheming rival, the birth of your eldest child. Laughter, when it comes, is thin and fleeting. Even your favorite jester, usually so skilled at drawing smiles from stone, now offers only gentle jests, careful not to push too far, as if levity itself might frighten you into the grave. Through it all, you lie propped on pillows, the object of this elaborate theater. Sometimes you drift in and out, the voices blurring into a single chorus of forced cheerfulness and thinly veiled panic. You see the strain on every face, the servants working double shifts, the nobles unsure whether to mourn or maneuver, your wife playing her part as grieving queen in waiting, eyes red, but composure unbroken. You notice, too, the subtle calculations. Who stays the longest at your bedside? Who is first to offer a tear, a prayer, a memory? Who keeps a respectful distance, neither too eager nor too aloof? You know the game. After all, you invented half its rules. For every display of devotion, there is an equal and opposite undercurrent of self preservation. Some watch your air more than they watch you. Others whisper with the captain of the guard or slip away for urgent conferences in the next room. Yet, for all its calculation, the care is not wholly false. Even the most ambitious among your courtiers seem unnerved by the reality of your suffering. Death, when it comes so close, has a way of cutting through even the most practiced masks. There is genuine sadness, fear, even love, tangled with ambition and etiquette. Your friends hold your hand a moment longer than protocol requires. Your wife lingers by your pillow late into the night, her eyes swollen with tears she tries not to shed. As the hours pass, the sick room becomes a crossroads, a place where everyone's past and future intersect. The courtiers, the family, the doctors, the priests, and you, at the center of it all, each locked in a strange dance of hope and resignation. You try to offer comfort, to speak a few last words, to forgive old debts and bless the living. Sometimes the effort is too great, and you simply close your eyes, letting their voices wash over you like a tide. Eventually, the crowd thins. Only the closest remain, your wife, your heir, a faithful servant or two, the priest ready with final prayers. The court outside grows quieter, the corridors emptying as people make their own preparations for what comes next. Even now, your sick room remains the beating heart of the realm, pulsing with anxiety, memory, and the unbearable weight of waiting. And you, Charles the First Robert, endure, king, patient, symbol, and spectacle, cradled in the arms of a court that can neither let you go nor hold you back from the darkness gathering just beyond the candlelight. There comes a day, a morning gray and unspectacular, when you realize that your body is no longer really yours. Your limbs belong to the bed now. Your breath, once proud and thunderous, arrives in shallow gasps. Your heart, that old warhorse, beats out a tired rhythm, skipping a step here and there, as if testing the boundaries between presence and absence. You are Charles the First Robert, but your body has its own plans, and you are only along for the ride. You notice the changes first in the smallest things. A cup feels too heavy. The chamber's chill seeps into your bones and will not leave, even when your attendants pile you with blankets. Food has become a memory, not a pleasure. Each attempt at eating leaves you more exhausted than the last. Water, thick and metallic on your tongue, sometimes dribbles from your lips before you can swallow. Even talking is an ordeal. Every word is chosen for necessity, not for beauty. Your skin is no longer the skin of a king, but the thin, fragile parchment of a stranger. It bruises at a touch. Fingers and toes swell, then shrink, then tingle with pins and needles, as if even they are bored of waiting. Your eyes, once sharp and commanding, blur the world around you. Light hurts. Shadows lengthen and writhe in the corners, and you are never quite certain what is real and what is fever dream. The air itself has grown heavy, thick as honey, slow to enter your lungs, reluctant to leave. The court's theater goes on, but you no longer play your part. Now you observe, half present, half adrift. The Queen's voice reaches you from the end of a tunnel. Your son's anxious face looms in and out of focus. The priests murmur prayers you have heard so many times that you recite them silently as they speak, sometimes finishing a line before their lips move. Your world is reduced to a narrow slice of ceiling and the shifting patterns of dust in a sunbeam. Sleep comes in fits, or not at all. Some nights you drift for hours, floating in a place where nothing hurts, where you are neither king nor sick man, but something lighter, untethered. Then you are yanked back, choking, gasping, as your lungs rebel. Other times you lie awake, counting heartbeats, listening to the scrape of slippers on the flagstones, the scrape of the chamber door, the soft muttering of servants who think you cannot hear. Your senses sharpen and dull in cycles. One moment, every sound is amplified, the clink of a spoon, the whisper of a page turning, the sob stifled in your wife's sleeve. The next, all is muffled and far away, as if you are submerged beneath black water. You lose track of day and night. Time stretches, bends, circles back on itself. There are hours you cannot account for, lost perhaps to sleep, or perhaps simply stolen by the illness itself. Sometimes your thoughts come clear. In those rare lucid moments, you remember who you are: king, father, husband, ruler of men. You recall victories, feasts, days of sunlight and laughter, nights of strategy and celebration. Just as often, those memories slip from your grasp, replaced by confusion, fear, or the strange comfort of indifference. The world beyond your bed has become an abstraction, a collection of stories you once told, a list of obligations you can no longer fulfill. And the exhaustion, oh, the exhaustion. It is not just tiredness, but a kind of gravity, an anchor tied to your chest, pulling you ever downward. Even the effort to care feels enormous. Ambition is gone, pride irrelevant. Your only task is to endure, to breathe, to wait. Your body grows heavier by the hour, pressing you into the mattress as if the very earth is calling you back. Sometimes you see shapes in the shadows. Your mother, long dead, smoothing your hair, your old tutor, wagging his finger at your laziness. A knight you once admired, saluting in silence. You are not frightened by these visitors. In truth, they are less troubling than the living, whose concern has become unbearable. It is easier to close your eyes and let the memories, the regrets, the old joys and old mistakes swirl together in a gentle, half remembered procession. You begin to welcome the darkness, the pause between breaths, the gentle closing of one world and the opening of another. You are not quite ready, not quite resigned, but you are so tired. If only you could sleep, truly sleep, and wake to find this all behind you, the fever gone, your kingdom safe, your family whole, but deep down, you know, your body is giving up. The will that once ruled armies, signed treaties, and inspired loyalty in men is reduced to this one slow, fading breath after another. Charles the First, Robert, king and man, slipping inch by inch into that country where power, fear, and even hope can no longer follow. There is a strange clarity that comes in the final stage, as if suffering burns away the fog that life so artfully spreads over death. For weeks you have struggled against the tide, against the fever, the pain, the parade of doctors, the rituals, and the tears. Now, with your strength gone and your senses faltering, you, Charles the First Robert, realize there is no more fight left. You do not rage, you do not curse, you simply know. The end is not a theory, but a certainty, and it waits for you with the patience of a saint. You are not afraid, not in the way you once were. There is fear, yes, but it is an old companion now, quiet, worn thin, a background hum rather than a shriek. Instead, you feel something closer to resignation, or perhaps relief. For so long, you have lived under the weight of crowns and expectations, always another decision to make, another enemy to watch, another mouth to feed or promise to keep. Now, for the first time, there is nothing more to be done. You observe the room around you with the detachment of a guest. The familiar faces, your wife, pale with grief and exhaustion, your son standing stiffly as if already practicing for his own coronation, the priest with his ever ready book and quiet murmurs are all part of a ritual that is no longer about you, but about what comes after. The court outside whispers your name, not in hope, but in anticipation. The kingdom's breath is held, not out of love, but out of habit. Your world has shrunk to a narrow strip of ceiling, a collection of shadows, the flicker of a candle, the pressure of a cool hand on your brow. Even your thoughts grow still. Ambitions, regrets, triumphs. They seem to flatten into stories that belong to someone else. The fever, mercifully, is ebbing now, replaced by a gentle numbness that makes the aches and chills almost a memory. You remember the legends you were told as a boy of kings who met their deaths bravely, eyes open, voices clear, issuing orders or forgiveness with their final breath. Now you know the truth. Most do not die in glory, but in exhaustion. There are no grand speeches, no heroic oaths, just the slow erosion of self, washed away by a tide of pain and weariness. You wonder briefly if this is how your own father felt and his father before him. You wonder if, in the end, all kings share the same quiet terror that nothing we do truly matters when death draws near. It is tempting, even now, to pretend, to reach for one last act of authority, one last pronouncement. But your voice is gone, your words mere whispers. Instead, you settle for a small gesture, a squeeze of your wife's hand, a nod to your son, a glance of thanks to the priest. They understand, or at least they pretend to. Perhaps that is mercy enough. You find yourself thinking not of wars and treaties, but of simple things. The taste of ripe fruit on a summer day, the sound of laughter echoing in a marble hall, the coolness of water on your skin, your mother's lullabies, a hunting trip in the bright woods of your youth, before the crown, before the burdens. These are the things that linger, more vivid than battles or banners or crowns. In the stillness, you sense the weight of the kingdom shifting. Already decisions are being made that do not involve you. Already, your son is consulting with advisors. Your wife is preparing herself for a world without you. The court is dividing itself into camps, those who will mourn and those who will maneuver. You are present for none of it. The most powerful man in Hungary has become a ghost, floating at the edges of his own legacy. You do not know what happens next, and for the first time, you do not care. The future belongs to others now. Your life, with all its triumphs and humiliations, is receding. You are aware of every breath, every slowing heartbeat, every flicker of light at the edge of your vision. There is no more tomorrow to worry over, no more intrigue to guard against, no more promises to keep. You try, in your last lucid moment, to find meaning, to draw comfort from faith or philosophy or history, but meaning, like memory, slips through your fingers. In the end, it is just this: the body letting go, the world moving on, and the darkness coming gently, like the end of a long, exhausting day. You are Charles the First Robert, and you are dying, not as a king, not as a legend, but as a man, quiet, spent, and oddly at peace, surrounded by the trappings of power that in these last hours are only shadows cast by candlelight. At the edge of consciousness, you become aware that your world is more ritual than reality. The fever has burned itself down to a sullen ember, leaving you adrift in a half light that is not quite dream and not quite waking. In this twilight, the great machinery of death rolls slowly into motion. There is a script to follow. The players have taken their places. The king is dying, and so the final rituals begin. Incense is everywhere. Thick coils of smoke rise from censers, curling through the heavy air, clinging to curtains, saturating every corner with the scent of frankincense and myrrh. The priests are never far. They hover at the bedside, murmuring Latin words that slip over you like a warm blanket. You cannot always tell where one prayer ends and another begins. Their voices are steady, practiced, a gentle tide that keeps time with your breath, slower now, more labored, an uncertain metronome. The chamber is crowded with candles, their light golden and soft, blurring the sharp edges of the world. Some stand in heavy silver candelabras, others flicker in humble clay pots set atop window sills and stools. The shadows they cast sway and dance across the ceiling, sometimes forming shapes you almost recognize. Your mother's face, your childhood hound, the outline of a favorite hunting wood. The flames, like your life, are small and flickering, stubborn, but ultimately doomed to gutter out. Fresh rushes are strewn across the floor, meant to absorb the worst of the chamber's sickness. But you know the truth. Nothing so simple can hold back what is coming. The queen insists on flowers. Their petals, bright and fragrant, stand sentinel at your bedside. Roses, lilies, the last of the season's violets. Their beauty is a small act of defiance against the stink of sickness and the monotony of suffering. Outside, the court waits, hushed and restless. Inside, everything happens in slow motion. A priest reads softly from the Psalms, his voice rising and falling with the rhythm of your breath. You have heard these words before at coronations, at funerals, in the hours before battle. Now they have a new, sharp clarity. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. It is a line you once recited with bravado, a talisman against fear. Now, as your own voice joins weakly with the priest's, you feel how fragile such courage really is. The final sacraments are prepared with reverence. Holy water is sprinkled on your brow, icy and sharp, as if to rouse you for one last battle. The host is placed on your tongue, dry and crumbling, a promise of peace that feels as distant as the morning sun. The priest anoints your forehead with oil, his thumb tracing the sign of the cross. For the remission of your sins, he whispers. The scent is sweet, but the gravity of the moment is bitter. You confess or try to. The words come halting, not for lack of guilt, but from sheer exhaustion. You are already drifting, the world dissolving at the edges. Your family gathers for the last time. The queen sits on one side, her eyes hollow from sleepless nights. Your son kneels at your feet, his hands white-knuckled on the bedpost. He does not speak. There is nothing left to say. The younger children hover in the background, watched over by a nurse, their faces a mixture of confusion and dread. You wish you could tell them something comforting, something memorable, but the words are tangled in your throat. The physicians, their parade of remedies finally exhausted, stand respectfully aside. Their hands are folded, their eyes downcast. You imagine that some are already rehearsing the stories they will tell at other courts, how valiantly they fought, how noble you were, how the sickness proved too cruel for any mortal art. History will remember their attendance, if not their failures. The rituals continue through the night. Psalms are sung, candles are snuffed and relit, prayers are murmured in every corner of the room. Outside, the wind howls. Inside, time dilates and stretches until the only measure left is the rhythm of your failing heart. You are not afraid, not exactly. It is not that you welcome what comes, but that you have accepted there is no further to fall, no other threshold left to cross. You close your eyes and listen. The scrape of a chair, the shuddering sigh of the queen, the whispered cadence of scripture. You see in your mind's fading light the shape of the world you once ruled, now receding like a tide. In this chamber, death is not loud or swift. It is slow, reverent, padded by ritual, and softened by the kindness of those who remain. The world narrows to breath, to flame, to prayer. You are both the center and the bystander, both subject and symbol, both loved and already missed. When the candles flicker low and the last psalm is sung, the final ritual is silence, a silence thick as velvet, holding everything that was and everything that now will never be. It is not dramatic in the end. There is no thunderclap, no sudden revelation, no last brilliant surge of energy. There is only a gentle slackening, as if the strings that have held you upright for so long finally, quietly, loosen and slip away. Your breath grows thin and then stops. Your fingers, still curled around your wife's hand, go limp. You, Charles the First Robert, die as so many have before you, in the ordinary darkness before dawn, in a bed heavy with ritual and resignation, surrounded by those who have been waiting for this moment far longer than they would ever admit. For a moment, nothing happens. The queen stares at your still form, waiting for another rise of the chest, another flutter of eyelids. The priest, more practiced than most in these moments, leans forward and whispers a final blessing, pressing a cool palm to your brow. The doctors hover, their faces somber, searching for any excuse to delay the inevitable. But even they must finally accept the king is dead. And then, as if a spell has been broken, the world begins to move again. The priest signals to a servant who slips silently from the room to spread the word. The queen straightens, composes herself, wipes her eyes. Your eldest son, now officially the next king, kneels by your bed for one last prayer, his shoulders stiff with the shock of new responsibility. The children are ushered away, tears quickly blotted, their lives rearranged by a single breathless moment. Outside your chamber, the palace stirs. Servants carry the news from room to room with a mix of solemnity and relief. There is a protocol for everything, even grief. The royal banner is lowered. Black cloth is hung from balconies. A bell tolls, slow and measured, calling the city to attention. Courtiers appear in mourning dress as if by magic, their expressions carefully composed for public sorrow and private calculation. The council convenes at once. Your death is not an ending, but the start of a new cycle of urgency. There are oaths to be sworn, documents to be sealed, positions to be offered and denied. The chancellor delivers a eulogy, part history, part politics, outlining your achievements in suitably reverent tones while glancing sidelong at the new king to see how he reacts. Loyalists mutter prayers for your soul. Others, those who have waited in the wings, trade cautious glances and begin to tally debts and alliances. For some, your death is a liberation. There are servants who sigh quietly, relieved to be free of the watchfulness and tension that clung to your sick room. There are nobles who now feel bold enough to speak of old grievances and new ambitions. For a handful of the oldest, who remember you as a young and vigorous king, there is a true sadness, a sense that an era has ended, though they cannot agree if it was a golden one or merely another link in the chain of history. The queen receives condolences, her face set in a mask of dignity. She accepts words of comfort with practiced grace, while her mind, you know, is already calculating the next moves, securing her children's future, navigating the dangerous waters of widowhood, and managing a court that will soon see her less as a queen and more as an obstacle or a relic. Your son, now king, bears the weight of 1,000 expectations in every glance, every word, every clumsy gesture of authority. Outside the palace, the city's response is more practical. Merchants wonder if taxes will change. Peasants pray, or pretend to, and wonder what sort of king the next will be. The church prepares masses. The bakers prepare black bread for the mourners. The world goes on, as it always does. For most, your death is another day's work, another reason to gossip, another brief shiver of the familiar truth that all power, even royal power, is mortal. Within the palace, the machinery of death and succession spins without pause. Your body is carefully washed, dressed, and displayed. The court lines up to pay respects, each gesture carefully observed and catalogued. Some faces are wet with genuine tears, others with the dew of well practiced grief. Your enemies, if they mourn, do so only for appearances. Your friends, those few who remain, stand a little apart, struggling to remember the man beneath the crown. Through it all, you are strangely absent. The room you once filled is already shifting around your absence, rearranging itself for the next chapter. The stories have begun of your wisdom and your failures, your mercy and your ruthlessness, your victories and your many, many defeats. Some will grow in the telling, others will quietly fade, but all will serve the same purpose, to remind the living that kings die, and life, with its relentless practical demands, always moves forward. For you, Charles the First Robert, there are no more duties, no more burdens. The kingdom, which once seemed to revolve around you, does not pause for grief. The wheels keep turning. The living cling to the rituals, the promises, and the thin hope that their own endings will be as orderly, as ceremonious, as mercifully unsurprising as yours. Your death, for all its ordinariness, marks the beginning of a pageant no less theatrical than any coronation or royal wedding. In the shadow of your passing, the palace becomes a hive of activity, not the frantic, hopeful bustle of the sick room, but the grim, deliberate choreography of a royal burial. You, Charles the First Robert, are now an object lesson, part relic, part trophy, and, for a few fleeting days, the undisputed focus of every superstition, ambition, and ancient rite Hungary has to offer. The first ritual is the washing of the body. Servants, moving with exaggerated care and whispering prayers against evil spirits, bathe you in rose water and wrap your limbs in fine linens. The air is thick with incense, not only to honor you, but to mask the scent of decay. Every motion is observed, every cloth and drop of oil counted and noted. This is not merely hygiene, it is insurance, a charm against restless ghosts, a way to reassure the living that the king, however diminished, will enter the next world properly equipped. The priests descend in full force, armed with holy water, relics, and a robust library of prayers for the dead. The final unction is given again, for good measure. Your body is sprinkled, blessed, and circled thrice. Psalms are chanted at a low drone, filling the chamber with a sound that is equal parts comfort and warning. The rituals are as old as the stones of your castle. To skip a step would invite not just gossip, but cosmic disaster. Then comes the display. Your body, laid out on a bier in the great hall, becomes a symbol. Courtiers file past, their grief carefully calibrated to their ambitions. The queen stands in black, her eyes hollow, her posture regal. The new king, your son, accepts condolences with a gravity that is already settling into habit. Behind them, the line snakes out of the hall and down the corridors. Nobles seeking favor, foreign envoys calculating new alliances, servants hoping their loyalty will be remembered, distant cousins angling for recognition, even the city's notables, eager to be seen at history's latest turning point. The superstitions now take center stage. Bowls of water are placed around the bier to trap wandering souls. Mirrors are covered lest your spirit become confused and linger too long. Doors are left ajar at midnight, so your soul, should it feel inclined, may leave the castle without mischief. No one admits to believing in such things, but no one dares omit them either. Old women mutter that the way your hands are folded will determine the next harvest. Soldiers cross themselves and murmur that a king's ghost, if insulted, can curse a dynasty for generations. Meanwhile, the calculations continue. The Chancellor oversees the inventory of your belongings: robes, jewels, weapons, rings, each soon to be distributed or claimed. Your personal effects, from signet rings to favorite daggers, are quietly earmarked for trusted retainers or ambitious favorites. In the corridors, whispered negotiations blossom: who will inherit which estate, who will gain which office, who will write the official chronicle, and who will ensure certain chapters are omitted. The funeral procession is planned with military precision. Banners are sewn with black crepe, horses are matched by height and temperament, and the city's dignitaries rehearse their roles. The streets are swept and the route mapped to avoid neighborhoods deemed unlucky. Priests assign psalms to each stop along the way, so your soul will not wander from its appointed path. The day itself is chosen by astrologers, who declare that the stars, though rarely kind, have aligned just enough to favor a safe passage. On the morning of the burial, bells toll low and slow. Your coffin, carved from heavy oak and draped with the royal standard, is borne through the streets by the noblest hands the court can assemble. Behind it, the queen walks with your children, her face unreadable. The new king is surrounded by advisers, some clinging with sincerity, others with all the subtlety of leeches. The people line the roads, some weeping, some crossing themselves, some merely curious. Most wonder what the next reign will bring. At the cathedral, the rituals intensify. Candles burn so thickly that the air shimmers with wax and smoke. Your body is lowered into the tomb amid a riot of prayers, chants, and last minute blessings. A coin is slipped into your hand for the ferryman, a handful of earth tossed onto the casket so the kingdom itself will not forget you. When the slab is finally placed and sealed, a hush falls, part reverence, part relief. But even here, in this most sacred moment, the calculations never stop. Eyes flicker across the assembly, noting who is absent, who stands closest to the new power. The chancellor whispers to the bishop. The captain of the guard exchanges a meaningful look with the chamberlain. The queen's ladies in waiting huddle in dark corners. The business of the realm, interrupted only briefly, resumes even before the echoes of the final psalm have faded. You, Charles the First Robert, are now officially history. Your bones lie in royal darkness, surrounded by relics and the weight of 1,000 superstitions. Your legacy, like your body, is no longer yours to protect. The world above ground has already moved on to the next crisis, the next alliance, the next king's headaches and heartbreaks. Down here, among the incense and stone, there is only silence and the slow, quiet settling of dust, both on your memory and on the history you once believed you could shape forever. It does not take long for your presence to dissolve. By the time the candles burn low on the night of your burial, the court is already adjusting to the new order. Your name is spoken with a reverence that is curiously thin, formal, polished, the language of memorials and eulogies, already being worn down by repetition. You, Charles the First Robert, are now a story told over cold meat in the great hall, a handful of lines in the evening's prayers, a subject for historians and gossip mongers alike. The trappings of mourning fade faster than anyone expects. Black banners are taken down, folded and stored for the next occasion. The city resumes its rhythms. Markets reopen, gossip resumes, horses and carts clatter down the streets. The palace, for all its marble and memory, is not a mausoleum. Its corridors fill with new voices, new priorities, new intrigues. Your widow receives courtiers in half mourning, her eyes dry by midday. Your son signs his first royal decree before your tomb's stones are cold. The business of death, like the business of kingship, is bureaucratic at heart. Your will is read, your assets divided, your debts assessed, and quietly inherited. Trusted servants are rewarded for their discretion. Inconvenient truths are swept aside. Chroniclers gather their notes, sifting through rumors and facts, already massaging your legacy to fit the tastes of your successor. You were wise when wisdom is wanted. You were stern when firmness must be justified. You were merciful or ruthless, depending on which story best suits the new regime. Out in the villages, the peasants, whose lives have always been measured in harvests, not in rains, speak of your death as an event much like an early frost, regrettable but not unusual. Some mutter that the taxes might fall, others grumble that nothing ever changes. Priests intone your name during Mass, asking for prayers for your soul, but their minds are already on the next wedding, the next famine, the next royal birth. Your allies, those who swore oaths on your behalf, are busy defending their own positions, reminding the new king of their value. Your enemies, those who plotted and waited, do so with fresh energy, certain that now, finally, their time has come. Your children, still wrapped in the ceremonial weight of mourning, sneak away to play in the gardens, their laughter echoing up to the windows, where for decades you watch the world with a sovereign's skepticism. History, so they say, is a great river, and kings are only stones thrown into its current. For a time, your name creates ripples, discussions in council, disputes among noble houses, a few songs sung in the hope of favor or forgiveness. Then the river swallows the stone, smoothing its edges, carrying it along with 1,000 others. Only the largest rocks shape the flow, and even they, in time, are worn down, forgotten, except by those who make it their business to remember such things. It is the chroniclers, the monks with their quills and ink, who decide what becomes of you now. They argue over dates and details, polish your reputation, or let it tarnish according to the wind of the new court's favor. The illnesses, the fevers, the slow humiliations of your final weeks, these are trimmed, revised, or excised altogether. No one wants to read or remember that the king died like any other man, sweating, shivering, muttering half finished prayers into the darkness. In stories, Your death will be dignified, meaningful, perhaps even foreseen by an omen or a dream. The truth is far duller, more human, and much more common. For most, you fade not in tragedy, but in routine. Each year, a mass is said for your soul, but attendance dwindles, the words grow faster, and your name is soon lost in the roll call of ancestors. Coins with your image vanish from circulation. Your achievements, wars fought, alliances made, roads built, treaties signed, become footnotes in longer, more dramatic tales. Your burial place, once the center of courtly pilgrimage, is visited mainly by children playing hide and seek in the crypt. And yet, in a way, this is the greatest legacy a king can hope for, to become, at last, ordinary, to be woven into the dull fabric of history, your life and death, the background hum against which the next tragedies and triumphs will be measured. You are not cursed to haunt the castle. You are not immortalized in marble beyond the reach of dust and memory. Instead, you join the long procession of monarchs whose names fill out the pages of textbooks, lulling future students to sleep. Your court will dream new dreams. Your heirs will make their own mistakes. Your enemies will toast your absence, and your friends will find other causes. In time, someone may remember a story about a fever, a priest, a king who died surrounded by rituals and regret, and wonder if any of it mattered. History, like death, is ultimately a relief, not a judgment, but a forgetting. You, Charles the First Robert, are now only part of its endless, somnolent march. Another chapter finished, another king gone, another lesson in the spectacularly unremarkable business of dying.